The Kansas City Chiefs completed the 2026 NFL Draft, and what I have said is one of the most important ones, as the draft this year and next year are going to form the core of the team for the remainder of Patrick Mahomes' career. How did Brett Veach do? In my opinion, it's a bit of a mixed bag, but that's what we're going to be going over today. Won't talk about every pick in detail, but we are going to talk about some of the big picture takeaways from the draft, as well as some grades overall, and what could the possible thoughts of the Kansas City Chiefs be? What are some of the benefits and what are some of the downsides of a lot of the players taken in this draft class? All that and more today on Chiefs Coast Bias. What's up, Chiefs nerds? Welcome to another episode of Chiefs Coast Bias with your host, me, Mal Gore. Bit of a mixed bag for this draft. I think most of us fans were pretty pumped going in with Trent McDuffie trade, giving the Chiefs 9 picks, 3 in the top 40. And of course, we did keep those. The Chiefs entered with 9 picks. They left with 7. 7's still an acceptable number, but they did give up a top 75 pick in order to move up in the first round. And overall, I think that there's only one surefire starter out of this draft, but there are 3 or 4 rotational players that may get to see the field. I think the story of this draft, as any draft, is going to unfold over the next couple of seasons. But a theme that we've seen as fans in recent years is a lot of times we see the talent of these players that are drafted, and then we just wonder, why doesn't the coaching staff use them in the way that we anticipated they would? Or why aren't they using them all? Why are some of the personnel decisions made that give some players on the field while some stay on the bench, don't have a big role in the team? And to me, that's going to be another big question with this draft, where there is undeniable talent in a lot of the players that Kansas City took, but it is unclear whether or not it's a guarantee that the coaching staff's going to see eye to eye in using those players. So we're going to go over especially the 3 top 40 picks in detail, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the remaining ones. And I'm going to give my overall grade with a breakdown and thoughts and what this draft says as far as Kansas City's mentality moving forward. What does it say about what Brett Veach and Andy Reid thought about the roster going in? And what does it say about maybe a direction that they're taking, especially with the defense, with so many defensive players taken? The first 4 picks all going defense for Kansas City. So let's get into it, starting off with round 1, where the Kansas City Chiefs traded up from the 9th pick to the 6th pick in order to take Mansour Delane, cornerback out of LSU. The Chiefs traded picks 9, 74, and 148. This means they gave up their first round, their only third round pick, and the highest of their 3 fifth round picks. As far as the player goes, I don't really have a lot of complaints about the player himself. This is someone who most people agreed was probably the top cornerback on the board, especially with McCoy's knee issues. I think this made Mansour Delane the clear consensus number 1 corner. So it's hard to complain with the Chiefs coming away with what most people thought was the top cornerback in the draft. But there is some bad there as well, as you see on the card here. But you don't give up the pick. You stay at pick number 9. You still get a really talented player, best at his position. And we know in a Spagnuolo defense that safety is really important. And for me, the upside on that pick would have also been getting Chamarri Conner off the field, who is, in my opinion, a huge liability on this defense. I am also somewhat in the minority compared to a lot of people in that I don't think cornerback is as premium of a position, especially as it's being paid out now in the NFL. When you look at top cornerback contracts that are hitting at $30 million or more a year mark going forward, my issue with the cornerback is the cornerback's covering one receiver or one section of the field, and most teams are deploying 3 or 4 receiving options minimum on any given play. So I think even a really impactful corner isn't as much of an impact as something like a pass rusher. And you heard me talk about this a lot going into the draft, that I really wanted the Kansas City Chiefs to take a pass rusher. What does this pick say about Brett Veach's opinion on the roster? This is an admittance that the attempt to address cornerback in advance of losing McDuffie and Watson, because most everyone could see that that was coming, that there was a good chance the Chiefs were not going to be able to afford McDuffie. You can look back at some of my old episodes where we talked about the salary cap, how it was pretty clear that McDuffie had to be traded for the team to make it work out. And a lot of us knew that Watson was going to be priced out of the Kansas City Chiefs range, which ended up happening as he signed his deal with the Los Angeles Rams. What this is an indict of is the 2025 approach to the cornerback position, where we got Noel Williams and signed Christian Fulton. Chiefs drafting 2 cornerbacks in this draft, including one at pick 6, which is a clear indication that they're going to start from day one, that the Chiefs had penciled them in as a starter. To me, that's Brett Veach admitting that the previous approach didn't work out. Now, I did think Fulton showed a lot at the last 3 games of the season to where I would have been comfortable with those players coming in, but Veach didn't agree, and it is good if you to admit that you've made a mistake and to address the player. So I have no problem with the player. I just have a problem with the trade up. I wouldn't have even cared if they took this player at pick 9 but kept that 3rd round pick. Getting rid of a top 100 pick is a big deal, and a lot of fans I've heard say, well, this is a bad draft, so shed the picks because the players aren't as good. I'm actually of the opposite opinion. I think if the draft is overall a lower quality, that you do want more throws at the dartboard, so to speak, to increase your chances of getting a viable player. And I also just question cornerback value overall. I just don't think that cornerback is impactful enough of a position for people to say, well, this is obviously something that's going to immediately help the team and do it in a more meaningful way. The only players I can really think of be somebody like Marcus Peters, because he was a turnover machine. I think he had 6 pick 6s over the course of his career, was defensive rookie of the year. Maybe if you're getting a cornerback like that, that's directly getting you positions. But the Chiefs' biggest issue on defense last year was getting off the field on 3rd down. And my issue with cornerback is I don't think that that's a position that really alleviates that getting off 3rd down. Cornerback is a weak link position, which means that you're starting 3 or 4 of them on the field at any given time. And it's actually not about your best cornerback. That's not what's going to determine the success of your secondary. It's about your worst cornerback. And obviously adding an elite player can sort of, take that person at the very bottom and get them out. So theoretically that bottom slot is being replaced with someone better. I don't deny that, but I do question whether or not it can have an impact. I've also talked about distance from the ball. The defensive line just has a much better chance of being an impact player because of their proximity to the ball on any given down. And it doesn't matter where the quarterback's planning on going with the ball. If the defensive line can get there quickly, it's going to disrupt the play regardless of what target the quarterback is planning on throwing to. So, like the player, don't like the trade. Honestly, it left me a little dejected in round 1. It's not because I think they needed to take Bain. It's not because I don't think they could take corner. It's giving up the assets to get the corner. But the Chiefs weren't done on night 1. They, of course, had 2 first-round picks, which brings us to pick number 29, Peter Woods, defensive tackle for Clemson. There's a lot of good here. I'm already getting tired of hearing the Chris Jones comps. Don't do that. I just don't like it when you try to comp someone to a Hall of Fame player. Puts a lot of pressure on the new player and is almost never accurate because the probability, even if Peter Woods ends up having a long career in Kansas City, the odds of him ever being good as Chris Jones pretty low. And even if he's not, that doesn't mean that he's a bust or that he's a failure. So I'm not a big fan of those comps, but I can see why they happen because he does have pass rush upside. The other thing that I like about the pick is that it did address an area of need for Kansas City, which is always good. We need a defensive line help, so it's good to get someone in there. But there are some concerns that I have as well. First, no immediacy here. Peter Woods is not going to see a substantial number of snaps as a rookie. I think a good rookie season would be like if he managed to hit 25 to 30% of the snaps, that would be good. There's no way that he's going to be a 1st through 3rd down player. And a lot of what his skill set it is a little redundant with Omar Norman Lott, who I know that Brett Veach said the Chiefs haven't given up on, but it certainly seems like you're spending a 1st-round pick on getting a player whose talent and skill set was very similar to someone you invested a first 100 picks investment in just a year ago. So that part gives me a little pause, and the production. His production in Clemson, I think, left a lot to be desired. A year ago, a lot of analysts were talking about him potentially being a top 10 pick after the 2025 draft, going into this draft, that they were projecting that he might be, in fact, that elite of a player. But when you look at it in 2024 for Clemson, he had 3 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss. That's not bad for a defensive tackle, especially when you think they do play less games in college. But he followed that up in 2025 with only 2 sacks and 3.5 tackles for a loss. So this is a bit of a gamble. This is someone who may have a higher ceiling but a much lower floor, and that is a risk. I would like to see something a little more solid coming out of the 1st round, but I do like that they at least found someone who could rotationally contribute to the pass rush. Maybe it's someone that they can develop over time. And they're probably looking down the road where a year from now, Chris Jones won't be on the roster. Maybe this is a player that can step into that role, be the interior pass rush we need. And who knows, if Omar Norman Lott works out, now you're looking at two pass rushing defensive tackles. But just like I said with corner, where I think that's sort of an indite that Veach recognizes the 2025 approach is no surefire thing or may not work out. I think kind of the same thing here, that this is a recognition, not that they've given up on Norman Lott, but that they recognize Norman Lott, there's a decent chance he's not going to be the player that they thought he was, and that they needed to have more depth and insurance there. So I like all those aspects of it, but I'm not sure if that's enough to justify the 29th overall pick when there were some pretty good edge rushers still on the board that Kansas City could have taken. So this pick is another one where I don't really have a problem with the player. I have a problem with the value of where they were selected. So that's not an ideal first round for me, that in both of the picks that they've taken there in the first round, they've got one player who I do think is going to be very good. But maybe they could have gotten someone just as good if they would have waited without trading that pick. But the second pick in the first round, a bit boom or bust, and maybe that's just the best that you thought there was from anybody that you picked, that it's just too boom or bust, and they're going to go with the upside. But you would like to, with as many holes as the Kansas City Chiefs saw on their roster, you'd like to see them make a little bit more of an effort to get somebody with value that can come in and have a bit more immediacy. And to me, that's also just speaks to the broader rationale I discussed earlier, where if you think that this is a very high boom bust draft, that there's not a lot of high floor players available after the top, that's probably a reason, in my opinion, that you need to pick more in the draft and not less. So that's kind of my take on that. Moving on to the second round, though, the Chiefs only had one pick on the second day because of that trading away of the third round pick, and they take Mason Thomas, the edge rusher from Oklahoma. So another Sooner joining the team at pick 40, and there's a lot to like here, and I think the value is a little bit better here. I'll talk about my main hesitation, but he's got elite burst, great first step, one of the best in the draft, great bend, which really reminds me a lot of Tamba Ali and what made him such a great pass rusher. I think the bend is important because if you have a limited set of pass rush moves to line up wide nine and go far outside, you have to have that attribute in order to be successful, because it means that you can kind of lean, no pun intended, lean on that ability to bend and not worry about having to develop as many inside moves, because you have that agility and athleticism to still trip up the tackle and get around to the quarterback. So I really like that. And I like that it helps what I talked about earlier, which is one of the biggest problems with the defense last year was getting off the field third down. Yes, this is a situational player, but it's the second round. It's okay to have a more situational player in the second round. And you are a speed pass rusher who you can put wide nine. That's someone who's going to help you get off the field third down. So I really love all those aspects of the pick. The things I don't like, I think his production could have been slightly better. I know that's odd because of the sack numbers don't look bad. Had 9 sacks in 24, 6.5 in 25 with 9 tackles for a loss. But the sacks were against Auburn, Kent State, Texas, South Carolina, Tennessee. So it's a bit of a mixed bag in there. You know, I'd like to see him racking up and dominating a little bit more. Also on the bad teams, I know that's strange, but you've got a just inconsistent production, whether it was sort of the lower tier teams or the higher tier teams. So I'd like to see a bit more there, following up that 9 sack season with something a little bit better. But that's a very minor ding. I don't think that it's a major red flag for this player. It's just kind of more me being nitpicky about that production level. I'm fine with it overall, but you would always like to see, for a purely situational player, you'd like to see them dominate in that situation as well. The bad, is good and bad. I said I like that it's somebody that can help him get off third down, but you know, it is just a situational player. I can live with that at pick 40, but it is a limitation that you have to acknowledge from the player. So from a perspective of value, it may not be that bad, but when we're talking about the overall scope of what the player contributes, you are talking about someone who's going to come in and can't be a first down through third down. They're purely situational. And I alluded to this at the top of the video, where to me, this is a player who has a lot of potential and can help the Chiefs a lot. Is it someone who's going to see the field? Doesn't fit the typical Spags profile of a player. Only in the 240s on weight, purely a pass rusher, doesn't have the power moves, doesn't have the length to be the sort of set person with stopping the run? Is it going to be another situation where Brett Veach drafts this player and we don't see Spags use him because it's just not the prototype? Another situation where we see Daniel Sorensen staying on the field or where we see Chamari Connor staying on the field? That's my question here. Are we going to see more of that? No one really projected the Chiefs to take Mason Thomas, especially with like Zion Young still on the board. I believe Cassius Howell was still on the board as well. And the reason that they didn't expect Spags to take him is because of that size differential. It's not the typical player that Spags likes to have out on the defensive line. You could look at the upside here and say, hey, maybe this is a signal that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to change up the way that they play defense. And I would buy that, but we have to wait and see. I like the talent. I like that it helps get off on third down. I'm very anxious. Chiefs, of course, did not pick in round 3, so we're going to go to round 4, pick 109. Jadon Kennedy, a corner from Oregon, another cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. One of the reasons I think a lot of fans were not the most excited about corner at pick 6, other than the trade up, is also the position. Not that corner isn't important, but we've seen consistently that Brett Veach is able to find cornerbacks later in the draft. So you ask yourself, do we need to spend such a high pick on a corner when we've been able to find at league average or above league average starting cornerbacks later in the draft? This is an example of that because I think this is a player that does have potential. The versatility, played a lot of safety, played inside in the slot, played outside, has a lot of experience, multiple seasons starting every game in college football. The only bad I really see is that he is a bit undersized, but the Kansas City Chiefs have been able to get away with that. You can see the picture I've picked there, the outstretched arms, clearly has athleticism to still make plays and get pretty high to the point of attack, even though they aren't the biggest corner. And I question the need. You've brought in 2 free agent corners this year. You have Williams on the roster. You have Fulton on the roster from last year, and you drafted a corner at the top. You're already 5 deep there. Did we just spend a 4th round pick getting the 4th or 5th corner? That's okay though, because it's the 4th round. So I question the need, but again, very similar to some of the other players. It's under the bad column, but I don't think that it's a huge indict of the pick. It's okay to get your 4th or 5th corner in the 4th round. If he ends up being really good, though, to me, that just is going to make me think later on, did we need to take a corner and trade up to get one with a 6th pick if we were able in round 4 to get a really good corner there as well? So, a lot of defensive back, and I thought it was very odd that it was another defensive player, that the Chiefs are 4 picks in out of their 7 and they've gone all defense. We're only going to focus a little bit more on one more player, and that is round 5, pick 161, Emmett Johnson, running back for Nebraska. This is the kind of thing you like to see in the 5th round. I'm glad they didn't wait till the round 7 to get a running back. This running back is going to get snaps, I think, from the start in Kansas City. The production is crazy good. The vision is great when you look at the film. A great pass catcher and great value. This is a running back that might end up getting 25 to 30% of the snaps as a rookie, which I think is realistic with this player. Many people thought he was one of the 3 best running backs in the class overall. To get him in the 5th round, it's hard to argue with that. Here's a little bit on his stats. In 2025, he had 1,451 yards rushing. That's 5.8 yards per carry, 12 touchdowns rushing. Receiving, 46 receptions, 370 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's over 1,800 yards and 15 touchdowns. That is the kind of production that you like to see. And it means that he's a proven player. He may not be an all-star, but again, you're looking at round 5, having a running back that's going to be able to contribute early, having that pass catching versatility with those reception numbers, that's all awesome. Only downside with him, the bad, I guess you will, is the top speed's not necessarily there. Plays a little faster when I look at the highlight reel than on the testing, but it was in the 4.5 range with the 40. And then the size, not a huge back, but again, it's hard to disagree with it because of it being a pick in round 5. So I think that is a great pick for the Chiefs, and it's awesome to see a 5th round pick that is probably going to see the field a decent amount as a rookie. As you know, Walker has always split carries and has had missed time in each season. So having this player come in, having Emmett Johnson come in and potentially be able to be a backup if Walker misses some times, or just alleviate the load from Walker to reduce the risk of Walker getting hurt. Huge for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think when he's on the field, he's going to be great. And what I really love that's on this card here under the good, that is the opposite of Pacheco, is the vision. Much better at figuring out what crease and at what pace to attack the crease when he's behind the line of scrimmage, to burst through to get that 4 to 6 yards per carry. That is going to be huge for Kansas City, and it's something we sorely missed over the last couple of years because that just was not a strength of Pacheco's game. Only 2 more picks, going to lump them together. The reason I'm doing that is you don't expect a lot here. Finally, take a receiver round 5, pick 176 overall with Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati. Fine, developmental, Jalen Royals-ish. And then round 7, taking Garrett Nussmeier. Not bad. If not for an injury last year, had he kind of played to the level that he had previously or even higher, would have been a much higher pick than round 7 to get him at the very end. Hopefully, I think this is someone in a year or two. Andy Reid might be able to work that magic that he did back in the day in Philly, where he would take these quarterbacks, work them up a little bit, and maybe trade this 7th round pick for a 4th or 5th round pick a couple of years down the line. I like the potential there. And I like the potential maybe as Mahomes' backup. It's obviously not going to happen his rookie year, but Fields is only going to be in Kansas City for now, for 1 year. So this is a nice pick toward the future, and it's just hard to rag the 7th round pick. You're throwing darts. Might as well throw it on a quarterback that most people recognize, has a lot of talent, just had some injuries and had a hard time putting it together his senior year at LSU. Overall draft grade, I'm going to go B minus. I've already talked about how one of my hesitations is the value for what the Chiefs got in the first round, especially the trading up. I'm fine with the player. I don't love him, but I like the player at corner. I don't like the trade up. I don't like that you take a project player with the 29th pick. Maybe sit at 9, take a defensive back like Downs if you want to improve the secondary, or there's a chance that, he's still there at number 9, and you could still get him without the trade away. If you're going to trade that capital to move up, I would have rather seen him move up from 29, because it's hard to knock the value too much at 29. I still am, because I think they could have done a bit better. But when you're at the bottom of the first round, it's a little bit tougher. Make it like a McDuffie thing where keep that pick in reserve so that if you see a player that you think is near the top of the draft sliding into the late teens, early 20s, I would much rather see that pick go towards moving up from 29 to get a little bit better value there. That way, you're still getting a surefire starter at pick 9. A surefire starter is coming at pick 9. And then you show me by trading up from 29 that you see another player who's a surefire starter. I even think that would be better value. Other reason I'm giving it a B minus overall is, where's the offensive help? Other than the running back in round 5 that I do think can contribute, the Chiefs needed depth at offensive line. No offensive lineman taken in this draft. And it's a real issue for them. We saw it at the end of last season. It doesn't take long. You are always going to get past your first 5 on the offensive line. It's going to happen every season. There's not going to be a season where all 5 of them play every game. So you need the depth from that standpoint. And look what happened to the Chiefs at the end of last season, where they were dropping like flies. So the Chiefs had to get deep, and I would always prioritize doing what you can to protect Patrick Mahomes. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more value in round 1 so that maybe that round 2 pick could go for offense, or God forbid, keep your round 3 pick so that you can get a top 100 player to help on the offensive side of the ball. So a little too much defense for me. There was no real help at receiver. You can't have any expectation from a 5th-round pick playing wide receiver. No expectation they're going to be an immediate contributor. The Chiefs only won 6 games last year. I think the defense has holes, but I think that the offense has gotten too much of a pass. You don't only win 6 games unless you have major problems on both sides of the ball. And the Chiefs had problems long before Patrick Mahomes got injured. Think back to the Denver game, the Dallas game, where yes, the defense gave up a lot of points, but if you recall, there was a stretch of 4 possessions in the middle of that Dallas game where punt, 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 punt for Kansas City. The Jacksonville game with the pick 6. I mean, the offense had problems, multiple interceptions bouncing off receivers' hands. That hurt us against the Chargers. That hurt us against the Eagles. So I don't think it was just the defense. You have a lot of needs that need to come on offense. Mahomes doesn't have a lot of playmakers. So those are the 2 reasons I'm giving it a B minus. but this was a crucial draft. It was a bad time for Kansas City for this to be a bad draft. I would much rather have had the last year's draft be of this crappy quality. But like I've said multiple times, the players we're getting now, they're going to be the ones that ride or die with Mahomes till he's done playing. We've only got a few more years of Andy Reid. I wish the quality of the draft was better overall, but I'd like to see in that instance taking more players. If you think the draft is bad, throw more darts at the board, more balance on what side of the ball you're helping out, and better value at the top. Would love to hear your thoughts. Please like, please subscribe, please comment, engagement. I'll be dropping another episode soon, talking a little bit about Andy Reid and his future with the team and the way he's approaching the 26th season. So be on the lookout for that. YouTube's going to recommend a video for you. Give it a watch. I'm Malgore. This is Chiefs Coast Bias. I hope you have a fan-flippin-tastic day, and I think you all know what I'm about to go do.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.